For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This is Duville.
Hello, welcome to For the Young at Heart. I'm Lucille Jerome, and on today's program we're going to be taking another look at Alzheimer's. My guest today is Lisa Sobhian. She's an LICSW, and she's the Director of the Dementia Services and Life Enrichment Programs at Duville Life and Wellness Community. Thank you for coming, Lisa.
Thank you.
And we're taping during September, which happens to be the month of the walk. But you know what? I would like to know a little bit about you. How did you get into this particular field?
Well, I was a nursing home social worker for many years, and it was a long time ago. And we had a lot of residents who had dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And I started to become really interested in the Alzheimer's work that the Alzheimer's Association was doing, and it was at the beginning when they were first starting to have specialized units.
Okay.
And I became very interested in it, and then I was actually a little bit on a hiatus for a while raising my children, and when I decided to go back to work, I knew that Alzheimer's was really a passion of mine. I really enjoyed the work I did with the residents, and so I kind of then focused my work on becoming an Alzheimer's specialist.
Okay, so as an Alzheimer's specialist now, you're the director of a program, and you don't burn out. Some social workers do burn out in our field, but you know, when you have a passion, you really just don't burn out.
I think it's true, because I think your passion fuels you,
Yes,
and it's life-sustaining,
right.
and that's why you're able to kind of continue on that.
Right. So tell me a little bit about, where did the term Alzheimer's come from?
Okay, I know, it's kind of a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, back in the early 1900s, as we know, people didn't live as long as they live today, right?
True,
it was. I think the life expectancy, I think, was in the 50s, and so the numbers of people living until 70s and 80s and 90s was really so small.
Okay.
And in those days, they kind of assumed that if you did live that long, you would get what they were calling hardening of the arteries, or senile dementia. You know, they said that's just granny. It was assumed you would just get that. And so statistically, it looked like it was a normal part of what would happen if you lived that long. And back in 1900 in Germany, there was a woman whose name was Auguste D. And she was young. She was in her late 40s.
That is very young.
That is very young, yes. She was starting, over a long period of time, she was having symptoms where she was experiencing memory loss. She was very suspicious of her family. She wasn't recognizing family, became unable to care for herself, to the point that her husband needed to put her in a sanitarium, because as we know in those days, we didn't have specialized hospitals.
That's right.
So this was in Germany. And her attending physician in this facility was a young neurologist by the name of Dr. Alois Alzheimer.
There you go.
There you go. And he took a very keen interest in her case, because he felt like, you know, they'd run every test they could in those days, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. And he felt like she had almost an advanced form of aging, of what you'd see in somebody many decades later.
Right.
And he spent hours interviewing her, and the only answer she could give was her first name, Auguste. She could only write her first name, Auguste. So many pages and pages later of all of this, she actually died in 1906 at the age of 54. And at that time, Dr. Alzheimer was practicing, was doing research in a different hospital in a different part of Germany. And he had her spinal cord and brain shipped to him by train to where he was doing research. And he performed an autopsy on her brain. and he actually saw the hallmarks of what was later to become known as Alzheimer's disease. And it wasn't like he looked down and said, Eureka, this is Alzheimer's disease. It was his supervisor a few years later that named the findings after him. And at the time, they didn't think this was going to be very common at all. They thought it was going to be a very rare thing. Little did they know.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So over the years, this has become, it's quite an organization, the Alzheimer's Association.
Yes.
Quite a nonprofit organization. And I've been on their website and later on give the website to people because it's a wealth of information, a wide range of information. Okay? So right about now, we've got the name of this disease. They thought it was going to be minimal. We know it's not minimal. And about how many people have this disease and how does it differ from dementia? Because I know that's a big issue for a lot of people.
That is a very big issue, Lucille. Those are great questions. So right now, we have 5.4 million Americans with Alzheimer's disease. That's a lot. And what is staggering is it's projected that by the year 2050, that number will triple to about 15, 16 million.
What percentage is that going to be? Because we're thinking, as I understand, that it's not a part of aging, or are they discovering that it may be a part of aging?
No, it is not the normal way to age. However, age is the largest risk factor. So as you get older, so about if you're 65 or older, you've got about a 1 in 10 chance now. If you're over 75, that number jumps to about 27%, depending on the statistics you look at. And over 85, it's about 47%. But it's still not the way our brains are supposed to age.
That's right,
So the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's interesting because people will ask that question, what's the difference?
Regularly.
Regularly, and I do a lot of training for people in the field and families, and I usually ask it as a trick question, tell me the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's a trick question because basically, dementia describes a condition. Dementia itself is a medical term that describes somebody having symptoms of memory issues, issues with reasoning, functioning, judgment, all of those types of things, but it isn't an actual disease. So it describes the symptoms that someone has. It tells a doctor that something is very wrong with the thinking and remembering and cognitive and physical problems of somebody, but it doesn't tell you why. Just like if you were to say you were blind. It tells you the condition. You can't see, but does that tell you why you're blind? So you need a disease that's causing these symptoms. And Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia. It accounts for between 50 and 70% of cases of people who have these dementia symptoms. There are other forms of dementia. And the Alzheimer's Association actually works with all related forms of dementia also.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That happened more than a couple of years ago when they started
quite a while
broadening
back.
the perspective, which is good. Because you're right. It looks, to me, when I visualize it in my mind's eye, there's like this umbrella term. Okay? Dementia. Umbrella term. Alzheimer's, and then the other forms of it.
Yes, absolutely. There's things like vascular dementia and Lewy bodies dementia and frontal temporal lobe. I mean, there's so many that people have. And so it's nice to know that they can get the support from the Alzheimer's Association.
Right. Now, sometimes people will say, oh, you know, I'm so forgetful, I forgot so-and-so's name. And you have to reassure them that that's really, you know, when I remember one time we were saying something like, the day you forget what your keys are for, you put them in the refrigerator, then we'll talk about dementia.
Exactly, because as we get older, it's normal to have certain memory changes, but you know, dementia is more than memory. So we may have to use, you know, I walk down the hall now at work and people will ask me to do something, and if I don't write it down by the time I get to my office, it's gone. Completely gone. But if I write it down, I can still function. I can function if I write down directions, and I'm sure you're the same way. And so it's okay if we have those kind of crutches. It's
Yeah.
harder to multitask as we get older.
Exactly.
But we still function in our daily lives.
That's
Absolutely.
right.
So, but people worry about their memory.
They do.
They
well,
absolutely
that's what's out there in most of the media.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
the media is a wonderful educational tool, but
Yes.
it's also in some ways detrimental.
Absolutely, and
You know?
it's much more than just memory, and so that's why I think people, if they become educated on what's normal memory issues
Right.
and what are issues of things you need to be concerned about, and go to a doctor.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm so glad we have the website that you can mention later on.
Yes.
And there's a phone number for. There's an 800 number too.
There is an 800
so that
number.
would be good for us.
Absolutely,
at the end.
absolutely.
Okay. So now that we've got a few of the basics out of the way here, you know why you're interested in this, and how long have you been doing your work at Duvall?
Over 9 years now.
Over 9 years already.
Yes,
Wow, okay.
I love it. I really
Yeah,
do love it.
good,
I love the
good,
people I
glad
work
to
with,
hear it.
people I help, the families. Yeah.
Okay. Now I understand that one of the things. This is September, and it's the walkathon. It's the Walk for Alzheimer's. And when did that start? That's been going on now for quite a few years.
It has. The first Alzheimer's walk started in 1989 with
Okay.
9 chapters participating around the country, and they
Okay.
raised $150,000.
Wow.
So the Alzheimer's Association was actually founded in 1980 by a gentleman named Jerome H. Stone, who was
Okay.
a philanthropist and a prominent businessman and a visionary. And his wife, after many years of trying to figure out what was wrong with her, finally in 1979, they discovered she had Alzheimer's disease. And he was kind of astounded at the fact that nobody knew about this and how to help. And he really started at the grassroots and got different researchers together and family members and all of that. They met with the National Institute of Health about getting a nonprofit organization together. And so in 1980, this was started, and now there are chapters all over the country in different states and all of that. So there's a national organization, and then there are local organizations that work with them.
Really, it's not even 40 years old when you think about it.
It's not. It's not.
You know?
And so the walks now take place basically in September and October all over the country. There's about 600 walks
600
that take
walks.
place. Yeah.
We only have 50 states, but we have 600 walks.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So in Massachusetts, there may be some already going on in different regions of Massachusetts.
Absolutely. So now Massachusetts and New Hampshire kind of combine together
Okay.
in as one chapter, and they have 11 walks between them.
11?
11.
Okay.
Yes, and in various regions and all of that. And northeastern Massachusetts has its own walk, and I'm actually the co-chair of that committee
Okay.
to put that walk on. And we had our walk last week, the 18th.
Okay.
And we had about 1,600 people come out, and it's a wonderful, wonderful day. And what the walk does is it's not only the largest public awareness event for this disease,
Okay.
but it is the largest fundraiser for all of the programs that the Alzheimer's Association does and for all of the research that it supports.
It's the largest this is across the country. The walks raise the most money for Alzheimer's research.
And the support of the
And support of the
programs. So for
programs.
example, the Alzheimer's Association has a lot of things that they offer people that I think it's really important for people to know, because so many people out there now, as you know, as a social worker and working with people, aren't aware of the resources out there.
That's right.
So they're caring for a loved one and they're doing it alone.
Yeah.
And the Alzheimer's Association is one such organization that people can call. They can actually call 24 hours a day. They have a helpline. You can call and speak to your master's level clinicians and find out information, get resources. Just yell if you need to, if you're frustrated.
right.
The Alzheimer's Association has many support groups. You can even do online support groups if you can't get to one. They have educational groups. They do education for professionals and caregivers.
Okay.
Care consultation. You could call up and meet with somebody and say, I really need to, I'm not sure what to do with my loved one. I'm struggling. I need help at home. They'll meet with you free of charge and help you figure that out. Advocacy. They do so much advocacy, which is so important right now.
Yes, it is.
With I think all of this disease needing to become at the forefront of what is going on, and the funding of the research that they do. Since 1982. The Alzheimer's Association has been the largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's research, totaling over $300 million. And it's so important.
Yes.
It's so important.
Well, the research, well, look at how far we've come in terms of what we know
Yes.
about the disease process.
Absolutely.
In not even 40 years.
No,
Not
it's
even 40 years,
what we know.
really.
We've known probably in the last 30, 35 years.
right.
We've
That's right.
learned most about this
Okay.
disease.
So to me, that's phenomenal growth in
Yes.
understanding. A long way to go.
Absolutely.
But look at the money that's being raised through the walks.
Yes, and
Okay.
it's not just for the research, it's for all of that support that
Sure.
couldn't happen without that
Sure.
funds. And
Sure.
so even though the walks are happening now, people can still donate to the walk.
Well, sure.
Even though the walk has finished. And I think
Okay.
we'll put that website up at some
Yes,
point.
good.
So people can, if they wanted to, they can call the phone number or get online and actually make a donation to the Northeast Massachusetts Walk.
And dare we say that if they want to, they could donate at any time of the year.
Absolutely.
Not just limited to September.
Absolutely.
But this is an opportune time.
It is an opportune time, yes. Absolutely.
Okay. So tell me about some of the recent research. Is there some recent, like something that's an aha? Maybe we're onto some different tactic.
I think there's some, I think what they're trying to
difficult.
do, it is so difficult. And, there's some different theories out there. Some of the researchers are focusing on inflammation in the body, and some researchers are even calling it a type 3 diabetes. And because of our the metabolic resistance that people are having and all of that. There's a push right now to really try to diagnose this disease earlier. People can live with this disease anywhere from 2 to 20 years. The average is 8 to 10. That's a long time.
Okay.
And what they're finding is the actual changes in the brain are happening decades before you see the symptoms.
Okay.
So what they're hoping is that if we can figure out a way to diagnose this perhaps before we see the symptoms, then maybe some of the medications that are coming up will actually be more effective and work.
Well,
So.
let's hope that the progress continues
Yes.
and that eventually they will be able to find something.
Yes, there's hope. There's so much
always
hope. So much
Sure,
hope.
Sure. Well, when I graduated back in the Neanderthal days, we weren't even studying senior citizens. I mean, over 35 or 40, and you were off the face of the map.
You didn't count. You
didn't count. But look at how far we've come. Really, truly, in this
Absolutely.
disease and in the research on elders and the research on caregiving.
That's tremendous, Lucille. I'm glad you brought that up because I think caregivers are, they need so much support. When we think about the fact that Alzheimer's disease is the 6th leading cause of death right now, and when we look at the top 10 causes of death, Alzheimer's disease is the only one that currently doesn't have a treatment or a cure. We have made such strides, which we've had to, thank goodness, in many cancers and heart disease and HIV and AIDS and all of those things. And Alzheimer's disease is a little bit left behind at this point.
Right.
And with the numbers that we talked about, it's going to, by 2050, it may cost this nation $1.1 trillion to care for people. So we really need to find a cure. And for the caregivers, that some of them are doing this 24/7 on their own. And with the different symptoms and behaviors that people can have in this disease, that takes its toll on caregivers.
Right.
It really does.
Well, thankfully that there are services available, if people understand that, and also facilities that specialize.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things I've noticed over the years is the guilt that caregivers may or may not have, and we must keep them at home. We promised we wouldn't do this. They will never go into nursing home, and they sometimes work themselves to death. And I don't
literally.
mean figuratively
No, literally.
either.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay? So that to know that there are services and that you have to be around for the rest of your family too.
Yes,
Okay?
absolutely.
Isn't there a
Absolutely.
caregiver's bill of rights now that I
There
think
is.
about it?
There is a
Now
caregiver's
that I
bill of
think
rights, and
about
maybe
it.
on another show we can put that
Okay.
up. But there is a caregiver's
Yes.
bill of rights, and I think there was a stigma for so long.
Yes, right.
Part of that is because when this disease first started coming out, we have, as social workers, we know about the diagnostic statistical manual, and it was listed as a psychiatric illness.
That's right.
And so people wanted to be hush-hush, and we know it's not. It's a neurological disease.
Right.
It's a disease
Right.
of the brain.
Right.
And medical science has done so much to help our bodies with its longevity. And I think now we have to push to have our neurological system
Yes.
and our brain catch up
Yes.
to all of that.
Now we have another major event coming up during November.
Yes.
November is Alzheimer's Month. It's
is.
also National Caregivers Month, you know.
I
It really
didn't
is National
realize
Caregivers
that.
Month.
That's
So
interesting.
they sort of tie in their
Absolutely.
own little ways. So look at all the resources that are out there. So talk about a little bit about I almost said social work month.
That's in March. So in
November.
1983,
Yeah.
Congress
Yeah.
declared November to be National Alzheimer's Disease Month. And so what happens is people try to kind of bring that awareness. You know, there's a month, there's a week for everything nowadays.
Sure.
And
But they get a month.
they did a
deserve
whole month, yes. And purple seems to be the color. You're,
Yes,
you're wearing
yes,
your
yeah,
purple.
and you
yes,
are
a
too.
little bit, yes. Purple is the color, and I actually inquired why purple.
Okay.
And I was told from a colleague at the Alzheimer's Association that, and I'm going to read this just so I get it
Okay,
right.
sure.
Purple is our primary color and the foundation of our brand, combining the calm stability of blue and the passionate energy of red. It, like us, strong and unrelenting. Isn't that beautiful? And I
That's
never realized
poetic.
that people
Yes.
actually, when we have these colors, they
Right.
actually mean something.
They mean something.
So I know many facilities will try to do educational programs and heighten things. I know I once actually wanted to highlight what people can still do with Alzheimer's. And so we had an art show, art and music show, highlighting the art that
I remember
artists-
that.
Yes,
Talk
don't you remember
about
that?
That was beautiful.
That was Art in the Afternoon.
Yes.
And so our Life Enrichment program spends throughout the year doing so many creative expressions
Sure.
of, and I know so many places do, so many facilities will
Right.
do that. They'll do all different types of artistic things, and we decided to highlight it in kind of an art show, and it was have people come through, and it was really lovely.
Now, it's the whole month, so it would be many facilities and maybe hospice or maybe other groups. It's not just the specialized units that focus on November, is it?
Well, I think
more
the
broad?
Alzheimer's Association primarily drives that.
Okay.
They do a lot. They have a
Okay.
lot of speakers, and they have
good.
they try to send speakers out to places. They may highlight different things, and then I think people on their own, if they have a connection to this disease, will kind of highlight
Right.
that month in different ways.
There used to be a program, I think during November, somewhere in Andover. It was for a day or something, and they would have speakers come out.
That's in May, the
That's
Map
in
Through the
May.
Maze.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
Map Through the Maze.
And that's down,
Okay.
lately it's been in Worcester,
Okay.
but yeah, that's a conference for professionals and
okay.
caregivers, and it's wonderful because people come together.
So what kinds of things might be going on in the Lowell, Lawrence area for November? Do we know?
I don't think we know yet. I'm going to be planning some things, and I haven't really completely focused on that yet. Of times I've brought speakers in. I think that's really nice.
Okay.
Had opportunities for showing maybe a special documentary or something like that.
Oh, wow.
That's always really nice to show for people. But it's good. I think hopefully people, those things will be in the paper, and
Something
I
will
would
be in
hope,
the paper,
yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
And we can encourage people to wear purple during November.
Absolutely. Well, we do that every Wednesday at Duville is Purple
Every Wednesday?
Day. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, a lot of people will wear purple, and just like any of the other diseases where you have
Sure.
different colors and you try to wear it. I think it's great. It just heightens that awareness.
So at this time of year, when it's autumn, we have two major events for Alzheimer's. We have the
Yes.
walk in September, and we have the month in November.
Yes. Yep.
It's sort of like bookends.
It is
to
like
help people
bookends.
understand.
Absolutely, and I think it's nice that it's bookended like that. So you're immersed in it,
Right.
immersed in that awareness. And
Right.
I think the more education people have, you're armed with that. It's powerful to have that education and not feel as not know what direction to go in.
And people might forget it sometimes. It might be somewhere in the back of their minds. And then maybe they'll have an aha moment. Oh, this is what my mom or dad is doing.
Yes.
This is what I remember someone telling me would be better.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
that kind of thing.
Well, I think especially even programs like this, people may be watching and they don't have anybody in their life with it now, and hopefully they never will. But if it does come to that, they might be able to say, "Oh, gee, like one of the things we always tell people is stay in their reality.
Right.
You cannot reason with someone with dementia.
Oh,
you will lose, and you'll lose badly."
You might want to impress that a little bit more on people, because there are people who say, "You remember who I am? You remember my name?"
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
And
Who am
it's
I?
going to go nowhere.
It is going to go nowhere because the the brain is failing. The neurons are dying, and you can't bring those back, and so you can't expect people to remember something when they don't have the ability to. And that's a common thing, though, Lucille. People will say, if they just tried to remember a little bit harder on what I said.
If they worked harder at it,
yes,
they'd remember.
Yeah, or just stay right here, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Oh my God. Well, who was it that wrote, someone stole, Mel Allard.
Mel Allard,
Mel Allard. She did a whole program on their real world.
Their real world,
Whose world are you going to be in?
Right.
Well, and at some point, it's going to have to be their world.
It does, and I think when you work in the field of Alzheimer's and related dementias, you need to know you're entering into their reality. Right. You leave your reality at the door, and the whole goal is to keep people with a positive emotion.
Right.
Because, you know, we're not just memory alone as people.
Right.
We are spiritual beings and emotional beings, and if we can help people to feel positive in the present, then life is okay. It really is. And
because they're in the present.
They're in the present. They are in the present. You could tell the same joke over and over, and they'll love it. And and then the caregivers aren't as stressed because they're in the present.
Right. And the senses, their senses, the sight, the sound, the taste.
Absolutely. The senses are impaired. But if you think about your world, everything comes into us from our five senses.
That's right.
So if we heighten those, and that's really important, trying to heighten the sensory awareness for people and the sensory experience.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to be winding down shortly, believe it or not. And we've talked about so much, so much more that we could talk about. But for right now, we've talked a little bit about the history and the growth of the program, the numbers of people, the numbers of caregivers. Because if you've got one person with the disease, you have more than one person in that family who's doing the caregiving.
Absolutely.
Probably. Well, unless you haven't identified one. But sometimes it's more than one. You know, so that's a population in itself.
It sure is, and they need so much support.
And they need the support. Okay. I'm glad to hear how much support there is out there. And for me working in the field, any educational process is phenomenal because it will remain somewhere in the back of someone's mind for them to call on if and when they need it.
Absolutely.
I really believe that.
I
really
completely agree. They'll know, gee, I heard something. They might not know. They'll ask somebody else, what was this? And I think, you know, if we could get up the website and the phone number, perhaps.
The websites would be very important.
So the website is www.alz.org/MANH. And that website is there. People can go on and find so much information about the disease, about the supports, how to donate to the walks if they want to. And
you want to say that again, too?
Sure.
I know it's up there somewhere, but say it again.
www.alz.org/MANH. And the phone number is 1-800-272-3900.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Nothing wrong with your memory.
That number's in my long-term memory now, so I'm okay.
And and they have the website and they have the phone number. And I want to thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Is there one other thing you might want to make sure we impress on somebody? Or if we covered?
I think we've really covered so much, but just love and patience. And for people working with the folks with the disease, love and patience for themselves too.
Yes, yes. Taking care of oneself.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming today. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again. But today was Alzheimer's for us. And remember, this is the month of the walk, September. And then November is
Alzheimer's
Awareness Month. Take care. Bye-bye.
For the Young at Heart is sponsored by Duville Life and Wellness Community, a commitment to care, a legacy of compassion. This